Yes, ma'am.
Welcome, LA Progressive friends and family. Dick and I are here again, joining you with Desi Cortez. Desi has been so gracious to contribute his writings to the LA Progressive. And in fact, he's been contributing for quite a while. And this is our first time actually meeting. So, welcome, Desi. I want to tell the audience a little bit about you. You are an author, you're a journalist. You authored America's 10 Months Pregnant, Ready to Blow. Even Trump can't make America white again. A new, more inclusive, diverse 20th century America. Love it or get the hell out. Well, that's quite a mouthful.
Yeah, I think we're there right now, though. Maybe now we're past 10 months or 11, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dazzy, we were talking before we pressed the record button, and Dick, I'm going to let you ask the first question, but I wanted him to continue on a thread that he started. And I said, wait, stop. I want you to talk about, your experience in Denver and how you had to tone down your message.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to tone it down because you're always being, the oversight is a Caucasian male who is somewhat rubbed the wrong way by what you're saying and believes that it could be said in a different way. And that's even to me if they're on the liberal side to a degree. But I used to write for the Rocky Mountain News. I was one of the board of contributors for a couple of years for the publication went out of business. And the editors would always want to tell me there's another way to say that, or there's another way to make that point. And then I worked for KOA Radio, which is a 50,000 watt blowtorch, and it was like the home of Rush Limbaugh and all that. But I was the token, and being the token, um, the producers are always telling you you need to change that approach. Can you say that another kind of way? So you always do feel like as a African American, you're being told by, I want to say this correctly, the opposition, the noble opposition, that you need to watch what you're saying. And so it's good to be able to it's a relief to be able to write and write with some freedom and not feel like they're going to come in and cut this up and tell me why they can't say it. And that's what I've experienced with you guys, with your
Absolutely.
publication.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you as well for being thoughtful in what you say. I think it is important to be thoughtful. Like just now, as you were speaking, I could see that you're watching exactly, you want to be accurate and express how you truly feel, but you don't want to be inflammatory or provocative. And that's kind of how I conduct my life. I think for in my um, 6 decades plus of living on this planet, I've learned, especially being in Black communities and around Black people, and I've learned more about being Black by being married to a white man. I have this thing that I say I've become Blacker because of the contrast helps me to see the differences in our cultures, even though Dick and I share political views and so on. But what I've learned in living the Black experience, regardless of how you speak, regardless of the class, because there is a class and racial intersection, we all really have a very consistent experience when we interact with the white community. And
Yeah.
yeah, regardless of where you come from. I mean, even Oprah.
We all share the same basic in life experiences to a degree,
Yeah.
and I know working with Caucasian people, sometimes I work with a guy and I tell him it's a blessing because he is a libertarian slash, MAGA guy. But
Oh,
I feel like he gives me an uncut,
right.
unfiltered
Yes.
opinion that I usually don't get when I'm talking to white people because, you know, it's just it's the feel of the country. It's always been like that. When you said something earlier, I think as Black people, we probably maximize race and the role of race, and white people minimize it and dismiss it. And somewhere in the middle is the truth, But for me as a Black man, I've always felt like there's just no denial. Race and racism and classism and sexism and xenophobia is just woven into the fabric of America. It is what it is. It can't be erased, it can't be eradicated. You can't tell this story unless you highlight. those elements. It's just the truth. And I find out that most mainstream white Americans are able to dismiss that. You
Yes.
can, the litmus test is, how do you see Columbus? Boom, I see him one way, you see him another way. How do you see George Custer and Crazy Horse? Well, I think Crazy Horse was the hero, and I think that they were I think that, George Custer, they were they were coming to take the land. They weren't explorers. They were imperialists. It was colonialism. And when you talk to somebody that's not black or perhaps brown, you automatically see those differences, and you really can't go much deeper because you fundamentally disagree just on the basics.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be just a given.
Absolutely.
So Desi, you recently published two related articles with us. One about how Representative Al Green raised Cain and raised his cane during Trump's endless speech, but most Democrats sat on their hands. They had nothing to say. And related to that one, you had one that wondering where the hell are black athletes during this full-throated assault on black people by Trump and
Yeah,
his
yeah,
administration.
yeah. As I said, it's so quiet you can hear a rat piss on cotton
I
because
know.
it's just nothing. And they're tiptoeing. I think we all see what we see, we hear what we hear, and we feel what we feel with Trump on the horizon. And if this is not the time and the place, if this is not push coming to shove, what is? I mean, I don't know. And I don't hear black athletes at all. I mean, and I can't say it all because I'm a part of the Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, and they sucked up and kissed so much butt because they wanted the endorsements. This is a different, LeBron James and some of the people in his corner, they're totally much more active and more, talkative and speak up. But still, I would just think right now our hair should almost be on fire. And I don't understand why it's not. And looking at Congressman Green, I was just taken back. I was in a restaurant listening to it on my phone, and when he was escorted out, I just knew that would be the beginning of a parade, and they would all go out, and they didn't. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, baby, this just doesn't make any sense. They got to all walk out with him. This has got to be, there's strength in numbers. And I know Crockett walked out and a couple others later, but that was an opportunity. And that said to me, they don't have a lot of fight in them. I really got the student consul from Mayberry RFD representing me in a gunfight, and I'm nervous.
And you should be nervous. And I'm nervous too. I think that if Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman was still in Congress, I believe that they would have walked out. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why they're not there anymore, because they were just not willing to yield. And so they had to be primaried.
But
Mm-hmm.
worse than that, as you point out in your article, it isn't that they did nothing. Some of them came back and Democrats came back and criticized him, saying it was outrageous, it was inappropriate.
Yeah,
They
and
voted
see
to
that's
censure.
where
They voted to censure him. Did they vote
that's
to censure Marjorie
Marjorie Taylor
Taylor
Greene,
Greene?
maybe they have.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, so it's not just that they were sitting on their hands, that they were actually stabbing him in his back as he was walking
that.
out.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about you can be friendly, but that doesn't make you my friend. And I look at the
Right.
Democrats and I see them as Reagan Dixiecrats, and I see them as lukewarm, and they're playing it by ear. They don't want to offend their constituents, which are, down the middle perhaps. And they're not going to stand for what's right and just and true and honest. And I'm sorry, there's just no way Trump's agenda, Project 25, the Heritage Foundation. I'm here in Colorado with the Torres family. We clearly understand, what the Coors family is, what the Heritage Foundation is, what they want, how they see the world. That is, I think, more or less, he and Musk is, that's their blueprint to a degree. It's got to be stopped. And I guess I'm at a point where I really do believe, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but I think they were marching us off, to others. I think that MSNBC wanted to, Rachel Maddow, who I love, but she'd be sending out a terse email, and she'd be upset by it, and and I don't know, I just don't think that there's much fire. I'm lost. I'm lost as to where is the fire and when will it ever heat up?
Right. There's a lot to be said for getting out in the streets and marching. All of that's very important. And I include that when we talk about fire. But there are some things that people should be doing in terms of educating themselves. You just spoke a lot about what's happening gradually in this country. There are so many people, especially marginalized people, who are completely unaware. I'll tell you one thing that I was unaware of, and I learned it by reading a book. And that was that, J. Edgar Hoover, the former director of the FBI, who I think he was the director for like 50 years, he established COINTELPRO. We know about the COINTEL program, and there may be people listening to this who've never heard of COINTELPRO. It was an illegal surveillance project that J. Edgar Hoover operated for decades, where he bugged and had primarily Black people and other and famous people followed. He got dirt on everybody. And his goal, particularly with the Black people, he had this ridiculous, fanatical obsession with Black people and especially Black college students. He had assigned agents to follow and document every minute of a Black college student's life. But what I didn't know was that he also had facilities set aside in each state where we could possibly be interned. And it's in the book, The Burglary, that was written by, oh goodness, her name is escaping me. I'm not gonna try to remember her name right now. It'll come to me. We did a book tour with her. And I learned so much about that whole COINTEL and the break-in into the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania in 1971, which is how COINTEL came to the light of everyone, the full disclosure of what J. Edgar Hoover was doing. Well, if you don't know about that, if you don't know that there already were plans, then you can kind of, keep your head buried like an ostrich and, just live your day-to-day life while things are getting progressively worse. And who knows when we're going to fall off that cliff.
We are not, and I want to say this correctly, we are not in the light of people. And I think that's strategic and deliberate. And I think it's a perfect storm. We play into it. I work in public education, and I can tell you we are mass producing kids of color who are reading, writing, and doing math, multiple grade levels behind their white counterparts. And that's a fact. And it's been like that, I think, now for 2 or 3 generations. And we are not by design intellectually curious enough. And I don't think we understand the gravity of the situation and how it is seen by Maga. And I think Maga is, like Hoover, dead serious. I understand the program you're talking about. I'm in Denver because of that to a degree. When you mentioned, I thought about it because I grew up in Los Angeles. My father was in the Shalamuma Communist Party. He was in the Black Panther Party, and he wasn't anything particular. He was just in it like any other grunt. But he was afraid of that. Jerry Lee Amy got shot by the LA police. I remember 25 times. My next piece is going to have a picture of it, and it's going to be about that. But it was one of the things that propelled my father to come to Denver. And I came here too. And I was about to go to Crenshaw High School, and they were a little alarmed about that. And so I ended up here in Aurora, suburban Aurora. Went from one environment to a totally different. But my father was fleeing that because he felt it, and I mean that was Los Angeles in the early 70s. And he was raised there, and he was just knee deep in it. I'd go to the Shalamuma Communist Party meetings with him, and I can remember Angela Davis being there. When I was in college, I invited her to my university on a speaking tour, as we did with Bobby Seale and Stokely Carmichael. But and her and my father chit chatted. It made me feel good because it was 20 some years later, but 15 years later, but that was a part of my upbringing. And so I totally understand the ominous thing that something this way wicked comes. I mean, I get that, when you talk about the concentration camps, the re-education camps, the internment camps, whatever you want to call it, yeah, I think I believe this administration and the power to be clearly could have those set up and ready to go because that's what he wants. I think he's waiting for us to come out in the street. And when we come out in the street to protest whatever it may be from A to Z, he's going to unleash what I think is what he's doing with the FBI and all the other G men. He's creating an SS or a Gestapo. He's creating his own private army, and he wants to unleash them on the opposition. And I think that's people like you and I, and that's what we are. And he wants to silence us. And I mean, I'm a tiny, tiny fish, but you guys have an operation that I'm sure people read and hear about and, monitor you. I mean, it's just the way it is. And I think at some point he wants to silence CNN, MSNBC, Democracy Now, all opposition. And he loves. I had a piece a while back that he loves the poorly educated. He said that. He preys upon that.
Yes.
Yeah, he said it. And he's so audacious and so emboldened. He just speaks his mind.
I think right. So
I just want to,
it's certainly true that hell will be paid if people get out in the street. That Trump is looking for confrontation, but the problem is if we don't start opposing in a meaningful way, he won't stop. And then the new norm will be that, okay, well, he gets to do these outrageous things and we just take it and roll. And that's why Representative Al Green's thing was so brave. I mean, he knows that he's going to pay a price for that. No doubt he's getting death threats. He was probably getting death threats before that. But now they may censure him and punish him. And they know the cost. I mean, I think you mentioned Colin Kaepernick. I mean, his career is still ended, and he was a superb athlete. Could he have been a great star? Well, I see an awful lot of really crappy quarterbacks, and I'm sure he was better than some of them, right?
Yeah. Now, the NFL is a male soap opera. I've followed all my life, and yeah, Kaepernick would have, to me, by now had a Super Bowl under his ring, and he would have been successful. He was successful in the time frame he was there, and he was silenced because he was too uppity and because he was inflaming the masses. And I watched Trump take that and turn that into Trump was a part of the whole effort to turn him into an anti-American going against the policemen and the government and all that. He did that once again, tactically, deliberately, strategically. As much as I despise Trump, I do think he's diabolically, intelligent. I mean, the guy's smart. He's able to manipulate everything. He uses his limited powers, his super car salesman power for evil. But he must have some idea of what he's doing because he's good at it. And he's got himself back in the White House a second time. But I think all he's ever done from the beginning, and I know I was saying this before the first run with him, he was merely saying what mainstream white America was thinking. He said what they were thinking. He said, I'm going to take back our country and I'm going to make it 1959 again and make it white again. And white America heard that because they really, I think the mainstream, the MAGA for sure, they believed that their country was given away by the snowflake liberals who were, burdened with guilt. And that's what happened. And they're going to take it back now and put you back in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant, and me in the back of the jet. And then I think we'll all go back to normal and sundown towns and the whole thing. And I know it sounds perhaps over the top, but I just don't see what would stop them. That appears to be the mentality and what they want. They don't want the future. I'm sorry.
No worries. So I wanted to bring this conversation back to your piece, Waging War Against Black People, and we entitled it, Where Are Our Muhammad Alis? And I think what we're talking about here is the use of platform. That's where Trump's genius is. His genius is in branding, spitting out a message, seeing how it lands, and then determining, based on how it lands, determining whether he wants to go further on that. Because you see that he's reeled back some decisions, some executive orders that he's reeled them back because they didn't land very well. So he's always sort of testing the waters. But what we progressives can do and should do is, first of all, share content. The what we're calling now the broligarchy, the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, they tend to have complete ownership over the social media realm. And without social media, truth is, most of the people that are listening to this wouldn't be hearing it. When you have an opportunity to share it, because we don't know that we're always going to be able to do this. We've allowed privateers to take over spaces that should be public spaces. So we need to take every advantage that we can to share this information. But I want to get back to,
right.
I want to get back to talking about the 60s and Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown. There was a movie that Regina King, I want to give her props because Regina King keeps bringing the message and she does it in such a fabulous way. Her movie, I think it's a Night in Miami.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it focuses on Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and Muhammad Ali. I had no idea that Sam Cooke was as plugged in to the civil rights movement as he is now. I have a greater understanding as to why he had to go so soon. Same with Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. And then Muhammad Ali, because of his illness, you know, he was kind of okay. Well, why do you think that we had this amalgam of intensity and power back then, and we don't seem to be able to have it among our celebrity class?
Because, and I'm just guessing, speculating, estimating, I don't know, but it seems to me back then for sure we were as one people because of segregation, because of discrimination, because of it being so overt. You know, you look at Harlem, you know, you get Sugar Hill, but then you have the masses here. You look at Los Angeles, and you get Baldwin Hills and Windsor Hills, and then you have, you know, South Central laid out, and we were all there sharing the same experience, misery, whatever it may be. And by the 80s, we've overcome and we've moved on, and we don't believe in any of that anymore. And we're going to get our piece of the American pie. And then I think we hit our heads against the glass ceiling, and then we turned into negroes because we couldn't get far enough within the structure, you know. But we were on the same page then. It was more cohesive. And athletes in 1965, Green Bay Packers, Vince Lombardi, Green Bay, Wisconsin, the black players on that team in the off season, you sold insurance. You had a side hustle. You had, you know, you had to make money. You couldn't live on your salary from the NFL. And so that was different. Now, when you sign, you won the lotto.
Yeah, you know, that's a message. That's a message. See, I'm not a sports person. I don't really care about sports. I prefer to go to the ballet. But the message that you just delivered about the athletes, I saw a documentary about who's my boyfriend? Yankees.
Oh, Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, Reggie Jackson.
It's the only Yankees. He's a big Yankees fan, but the only Yankees he knows is Reggie Jackson.
Ask him, what's my boyfriend's name?
Mr. October.
Mr. October. So there was a documentary recently that I think I caught on Netflix. It was excellent. But what I didn't realize was that, you know, he wasn't really rolling in the dough in the beginning. No. It was difficult.
Yeah. They had to have jobs. And that was just a given across football, basketball, baseball. And you think by maybe Joe Namath in 68, 69, you're starting to get the $300,000 and $400,000 contracts. And then after that, you know, it blows up to where you're getting $1 million or $2 million. And for me, that's winning the lotto. When you sign a contract for $3, $4, $5, $10 million, you won lotto. And now I think that diffuses the anger, and that puts you in the house. And now you have to watch what you say because there's much more at stake for you and your family. And your answer to it is, if I stay here and shut up and get paid, I can help more behind the scenes. But if I stand up now and just scream and holler with everybody else and I join Kaepernick, well, we're all out, you know. And so that's why I'm gonna be quiet. When I don't know. I guess I think it's true, but it's an excuse because I felt like with Kaepernick, if they would have just said as players, as the NFL Players Association, We won't play in any preseason games, none. Because those games go in the pocket of the owners pretty much. The money does. And if you would have just said, we're not going to do that until you put him back in the league and you do A, B, and C. If every player would have said that, the vast majority of African American players and Caucasian and Latino and Asian American, had they said, we're just not going to perform, that's it. You shut down the operation. But they wouldn't do that because I think there's too much individually at stake financially, and you're just not going to take that chance. And I'm going to be honest, most of the cats in the NFL and the NBA, if they weren't doing that, there's no way they get close to that kind of money. That's just the reality of it. So they shut up and they go along.
I think it's kind of the same with the political class.
Same thing.
I mean, they basically, as long as they're staying in office, they got a bunch of aides going around arranging their life, and they don't make $10 million. Although it seems that after they've been there for a while, they all retire with $60 million in the bank. Who knows where that came from? And so they don't want to rock the boat because they've seen, Trump and his clan and Musk. They have lots of money to dislodge people. I mean, they knocked out Jamal Bowman, they knocked out Cory Bush, and they're threatening both Democrats and Republicans. And those people, by and large, don't want to lose their soft ticket.
Yeah.
Well, they're operating like it is oligarchs and it is a mafia mentality. And I think that's what Trump is halfway steeped in. Al Sharpton said it a while back, years ago. He said, I was with him in New York. We didn't grow up together, but we grew up together. And he's a hustler. He's a hustler. That's what he is. To America, to the world, he may be a lot of different things. But to the cats there, he was a hustler. And he's hustling right now. And I think he knows how to punk and intimidate people and push people around and scare people. And that's just his tactics. He is a frat boy bully. And I don't think he wants to confront very many Black women, Latino women. I think he's afraid of them because they're not afraid of him. Ms. Harris was not afraid of him. Women aren't going to be afraid of him. And there are some guys who aren't afraid of him. But most people, I think, are intimidated, particularly in his party, and they just suck up and they kiss his behind. And I do think it's what you said earlier. They're in it for the money. They're in it for the money. Malcolm X said what Ross Perot said to me. There's not a dime's worth of difference between Democrats and Republicans. They're pretty much political pimps and hustlers. And I pretty much believe that. I mean, I think there's good on all sides, and I vote Democratic and all of that. But I'm just saying, I'm a progressive. I'm a Democrat, socialist Democrat. I'm a revolutionary. I think the country needs to change. But I think most people in politics are there for the hookup and for their career. And I think Trump got into this because he was just trying to further his brand. He had no idea he was going to win the first time. He was trying to further the Trump brand. That's what you get into politics for.
But I agree with you wholeheartedly, except there's one component, one element of this equation that tends to be given short shrift, and that is the responsibility of the people. I cannot forgive people who just are not engaged. I can understand people taking a stand and saying, I'm not voting because X, Y, Z. And I know what X, Y, Z is because I've done my research, I've done my homework. But people who just are not involved at all put all of us at risk. It's why Trump is president right now.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. People stayed home. They stayed home 4 years. They always stayed home. And I mean, we showed up for Obama, and I get it. But we didn't show up for Harris, and I know why. And I'm disgusted at the people of color and the men who didn't show up, because they didn't show up because they're disconnected, they're lackadaisical, they don't value it. And I think a lot of guys were turned off because she was a woman and it intimidated them. And I agree that our biggest enemy to me as a man of color in this country, and I mean, I've been Black all my life, 60 plus years, but our biggest problem is our lack of the apathy, the disconnectedness. That's what drives me nuts. That we know everything else is going on in the world, but we're not up on politics. You're not up on the conversation at the big table. We're not up on it. And we don't show up and we don't participate sometimes. But being a part of education, I do think once again we have mass produced generations who don't know what the hell they're talking about on C-SPAN, don't have any real understanding of this. They may not be they may be intelligent, but they're dumb in so many ways. They may hold college degrees, advanced degrees, but they have no basic understanding or knowledge of how this system of politics and economics works. And they just don't participate. They think it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, or they have enough money that they're gonna vote Republican because they think it financially benefits them.
Well, I think that you and I, you've already said this, that you feel the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are sort of two different sides of the same coin. Do you think that in your lifetime we'll ever see real democracy? And will we ever come to a place where a Black man and a Black woman can just talk openly and frankly with white people and be understood?
Well, like my initial thought is there's way too much water under the bridge, but I believe that communication is the answer. I believe that if we could sit and talk, we would be amazed at how much we have in common and the likenesses we have as just people. But I don't at this point I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening in my lifetime,
Well,
or my
if you
or my
marry
child.
one, if you marry one, you get really close. I mean, Dick and I, when we first got together, there were a lot of differences, and we used to have a lot of arguments that we don't have anymore because we really do understand each other, which always gives me hope.
Well,
Because the hope
you're the
comes from
define. You're Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier, and you're hooked together, and you've got to figure this out,
got to
and you
figure
and
it
you
out.
do, and you
Mhm.
do, and you figure out, wow, what are we arguing about?
That's
What are
right.
we disagreeing about? We have so much more in common. But I mean, how would we do that to black and white and brown and red and yellow America? Because we're so very tribal. It's just
And
why it's a part of why we can't get our what together because we are just so very tribal, and then we're so money hungry, materialistic.
and so segregated and so
Yeah,
opinionated about people that we don't even know.
true. Yeah, I mean, and now we were talking about this at work that look at whatever race you are and ask yourself, have you had anybody else in your house of another color that used the bathroom? When's the last time that happened? And it's
About
so
15 minutes
far
ago,
in between for people, because you just don't. I mean, it's your connections, your network, your friends tend to be what you are, and then for you guys, I think that's how you do become role models because you really are how it's supposed to be.
yeah,
But
it
I
just
don't think anybody wants us to be like this because then we'll be on the same page and we'll realize our number one problem is not race and it's not gender. It is to me classism and it's the elites and the aristocrats trying to pimp and exploit us. And they just
that's
keep us fighting over. And so when I sit here and I say white people and MAGA, I'm not trying to be so aware of the polarization, but it is what it is. And all my life I was told it was just a figment of my imagination and I was just making it up and no one saw skin color but me. And I'm like, well, now, I mean, clearly you can't tell me that skin color doesn't matter to MAGA. You can't tell me that. It's the most important element of everything they do. It's somewhere between race and gender and vengeance.
So we sometimes talk about how to find some solutions. And one thing we said on a very individual way, if it bothers you that you only associate with people who look like you and your same age and same sexual orientation, well, you can change that. You can make a point of making sure if you have a house party that the black couple down the street is invited, and if you can raise it at your workplace and say, how come it is that we don't have any Asian Americans? And here we are in Orange County, and there's all kinds of Asian Americans walking down the street. You can do it on an individual plane, and I honestly think, you talk. I think that kind of thing is the solution. I don't think it's going to come top down. We've tried top down. We desegregated the schools, and how well did that
right.
work?
They're more segregated
Yeah,
today than they were in
but it
1954.
has to be, people
I
have to
work in a
care.
high school and it's segregated. There's no
Yeah.
argument about it. It is, and we're black, brown, and Caucasian, and we're just over 1,000 kids, and we are rate. It is split 300, 400, and I mean, and they are by and large in their groups. There are some that mix and mingle. Don't get me wrong. You do see integration, but the vast majority they socialize, they eat in their groups, and you can try to do it. And it's like, and what Dick said is so true. If you go out of your way, and that's the part right there. As Americans, we almost have to go out of our way and go
Right.
say, "Hey, do you want it?" Because it's just not something instinctively done. Because I don't know, race has been an issue for hundreds of years, and I don't think people of color made it like that. I think we are the people who have reacted to what we've dealt with, and we've become isolated and insulated because we felt unwelcome and unwanted to a degree.
Yes, and I think that those feelings were based on some legitimate reasons for feeling that way. But I want to say something as a person who is Black, who married a white man, and I want to talk about some of the things that naturally changed in me, and I noticed it over time. I worked at a very large institution where there were 10,000 employees, and this I'll just call it out, as at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a space flight project. And when we walk to different meetings or go to the cafeteria, I noticed that after I was married to Dick for a while, you know how there's the black man's nod? When you walk down the hall or around on the street in a predominantly white neighborhood and you see another Black person, you kind of like nod at them. Well, I found myself nodding at white people. And I thought, wait, what happened there? But unconsciously, there is a change that happens when you are in relationship. When that relationship is real and authentic, it changes you in ways that you hadn't anticipated.
So it humanized white
Yes,
people to you,
it sure did.
where they
It sure
seem
did.
more like, "Yeah, how you doing?" As
Yes,
where you would
exactly.
just not see them or not
I,
necessarily acknowledge them because they're just white
I didn't
people.
even see him. I just be on my phone. I wouldn't even notice. And then I started to notice.
Well, and I think that's that whole thing about enlightenment. It's just
Yes.
becoming enlightened and realizing that, yeah, we do have so many fundamental differences,
Yeah,
but God, we have so many things in common.
that's
We
right.
just can't get to it, because of all the BS that surrounds us. And you have to make a conscientious
Yeah,
effort. And I think right now the country's doing the opposite.
yeah.
Right.
And he's orchestrating that.
Right.
And he has millions of people who want to do that. Like, I mean, I keep seeing that coming from Black and brown people and women, is that we're talking about how disconnected or detached white America is from our causes. Like, they're talking about foreign aid and all of that and taking away the money. I want to go, MAGA doesn't give a damn. MAGA doesn't think that's wrong. MAGA doesn't think that's a bad thing. They don't care if you talk about how the children can't go to school and they don't have food. It's just, and it's where we are. I'm sorry.
So, so,
It's where we
so,
are.
so partly what's happened is, uh, racism and racial animosity has been bottled up in the white community. It was inappropriate to bring it out in many places. You couldn't really say it. And what's happened in recent years, much thanks to Trump, but not him alone, is the cap is off. And now it's fine. We'll say we don't want that woke stuff. We don't want that CRT. We don't want that DEI. And what that means is we don't want that Black person living on our block.
But you can't say that. So you
Well,
say you
but
don't want DEI.
okay, we're half a step away from that.
Right. But we're getting there, right? We are getting there. I mean, if Elon Musk can just do a Heil Hitler
Yeah.
salute,
Thank you. I
we're heading in that direction.
I've written a couple of pieces where I've said and wondered how long will it be before Trump tactically, deliberately employs the term, picket, because he knows that it will be emulated and imitated across the country because he said it. And then we go to a whole nother lower level because we go back to 1959 and I'm supposed to step off the sidewalk when you come by and not look you in your eye and not raise my voice. And, I call you by your last name and you just call me Des. And, and even my grandmother gets up on the bus so that you can sit down because you're tired. I mean, I do think that's it never went away. It
Yeah.
was always repressed. It was always under the rug. And I do think that the Republican Party struggled to keep them in the cellar. And then I think Obama triggered it. When Obama was elected, the sky was falling. And then that was just it, you know.
Well, it's time for us to wrap up this conversation. It's really been a good conversation. I want to highlight the main point that we're talking about here is we're at a crisis in America, and we've been at this crisis before. We are enlisting the celebrity class to do what you can because things are bad. We encourage you, if you're listening to this, to like, to share, to subscribe. And I want to also talk about Desi Cortez's book. He's the author of America's 10 Months Pregnant, Ready to Blow. It's a long title, but I'll say that part. And you can find it where you buy your books. Thank you, Desi, for being with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for the platform. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You guys take care.
All righty. Bye-bye. Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.